everybody, I'm Tall.
And I'm Small.
And today we are doing Khan Academy's MCAT Prep Biomolecules Overview of Metabolism questions. And I can tell you Small's very excited to get into metabolism.
Oh, yes.
Okay, first question. ATP hydrolysis under standard biochemical conditions has delta G of less than 0, negative delta G, implying which of the following about the reaction under these conditions? Cleavage of the phosphoanhydride bond that occurs during hydrolysis does not require the input of energy. The hydrolysis reaction decreases entropy. The hydrolysis reaction is exothermic, or the hydrolysis reaction is spontaneous.
So this is a little bit of a trick question because all of those sound like decent answers to this question.
Sure.
So maybe if it doesn't require the input of energy, then I would be able to get more out, which is true. But as we learned previously, we have to input in like a small amount of energy to break any chemical bond to tap that stored chemical potential energy. Decreases entropy. We can't necessarily say that. We don't know how those variables work in the free energy equation. And then hydrolysis reaction is exothermic. Yeah, we can't necessarily say that as well.
Because we don't know anything about entropy.
Right.
But the one thing we can say, because they told us delta G is less than 0, because of that, that means we know that the entire equation is going to be less than 0, which means spontaneous.
Well done.
And we got it right. All right. Which of the following best predicts the result of raising the pH of an equilibrium mixture for the exergonic reaction? We have the reaction ATP plus H2O is in a reversible reaction with ADP, inorganic phosphate, and hydrogen ions. So we want to know which of the following best predicts the result of raising the pH of this equilibrium. Is it the reactions pushed to the left towards ATP and water, and entropy of the system decreases? The reaction is pushed to the left and entropy of the system increases. The reaction is pushed to the right and the entropy of the system decreases. Or the reaction is pushed to the right and entropy of the system increases. So entropy is disorder, right?
Yeah, so there's an interesting scientific debate between chemistry teachers about how we should teach this to students.
Oh.
And I always remember entropy as the ability to occupy multiple different positions within a space.
Okay.
So a higher freedom.
Higher freedom, less organized?
Yeah.
So maybe if we had a molecule like ATP that has 3 components to it,
Yeah.
and we make that into 2 molecules, that is less organized and it's occupying more spaces.
It gives them more freedom of movement.
Yes. So that would mean increased entropy.
Yeah, and so that's the one I went with. And my best example for entropy is really that liposome or liposome, the fat cell body that is just a fat cell, and really hydrophobic interactions in general, how they tend to form, water outside of them So those hydrophobic interactions, and the reason that our cell membrane forms the way it does is to increase the entropy of water is one of the reasons. So water is maybe more disordered, but it has more opportunities of positions that it can occupy.
And there's another thing here that I kind of forgot, and I had to read the question again just now to catch it. And we've said this before, that this is why it's really important to read those questions. The question said raising the pH.
Right.
Not increasing hydrogen concentration. In fact, the opposite. Increasing hydroxide concentration, lowering the concentration of hydrogen. Therefore, the right side of the equation is lacking. So we would need to push the whole thing to the right. And then, as we just described, if we push it to the right, entropy is going to go up. And that was the right answer. We got it.
Well done.
We're smart.
I hope we are.
Hey, AMC, just give us a 528. Just give it to us.
Yeah.
Why are we playing this game, AMC? Come on. You know we need those 528s. We'll talk about it later. Okay, next question. Which of the following represents the numerator for the expression used to determine the equilibrium constant for the hydrolysis of ATP? Meaning ATP goes all the way to AMP and 2 inorganic phosphates. Is it AMP times 2 inorganic phosphates, AMP times inorganic phosphates squared, ATP times H2O, or AMP plus inorganic phosphates squared? So we learned recently that when you have a coefficient in your equation, in your reaction, your equilibrium reaction, that you you have to take that coefficient and put it as the exponent for that substance, that moiety. I don't know if that's the correct usage of the word moiety, but I'm going to use it. So the inorganic phosphate in this case would need to be squared for the numerator. And our products. So we said before that KEQ, as KEQ is bigger, that means that the reaction's favoring the products.
Yep.
And that's why we have AMP and 2 inorganic phosphates on the numerator, because as that gets bigger, KEQ gets bigger, and we're favoring the products.
There's aha moments all up in your brain right now.
I know. I'm loving this. It's making so much sense. Okay, so you also have to multiply them together. I don't really know if there's a good explanation for that, but that's just the rule. You multiply them.
Yeah, it's the equation.
Yeah. But the thing to remember is you move that coefficient up to the exponent, so I think it's got to be AMP times inorganic phosphate squared, and it is. Okay, next question. How does the free energy of a system containing 1 mole of ADP compare to the free energy of a system containing 1 mole of AMP under standard physiologic conditions? So there's more free energy in ADP than AMP.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have 1 mole of each, then there's got to be more in the 1 mole of ADP, I think. Well, 1 mole literally just means 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd of that thing.
Yep.
So we have the same number of ADPs and AMPs. So of the answer choices, the free energy of the ADP system is negative, and less energy. No, that's not true. The free energy of the AMP system is positive and greater than. Nope, that one's not true. The free energy of the ADP system is positive. The free energy of the AMP system is negative. That's not true. The free energy of the ADP system is positive and greater than the free energy of the AMP system, which is also positive. That's got to be it.
Okay.
That's got to be it.
That's what I said as well, and it is correct.
Yes! Okay, next question. Question number 5. Under which of the following conditions would one expect ATP hydrolysis to be non-spontaneous?
Oh, we've had this question before. It must be important.
Yeah. Okay, a very basic environment, meaning a high concentration of proton acceptors, a temperature slightly below 37 degrees Celsius, which is physiologic pH, ATP concentrations very far below equilibrium concentration, and ADP concentrations very far above equilibrium concentration, or no enzymes available to lower activation energy. So they want to know what would cause ATP hydrolysis to be non-spontaneous. Non-spontaneous. So if I remember correctly, last time the answer was ATP concentrations very far below equilibrium.
Yeah.
And ADP very far above equilibrium. And that's the correct answer, but I kind of want to delve into those hints once again.
Yeah, I don't know that I really understand why.
Yeah. But that's why we keep going through this, and we keep learning. So, the hints. ATP hydrolysis is always spontaneous under standard conditions. It may or may not be spontaneous under conditions that deviate from those defined as standard. All chemical reactions, regardless of what conditions they occur in, will seek to establish equilibrium concentrations of products and reactants. One can expect ATP hydrolysis to be non-spontaneous when ATP concentrations are very far below equilibrium and ADP concentrations are very far above equilibrium.
Oh, no, that makes perfect sense.
Instead, the reverse reaction will occur. Oh, God bless you.
Thank you.
So we're talking about Le Chatelier's principle here.
I just think about it more since we're doing overview of metabolism. When would I stop breaking ATP when I didn't have very much of it? So like ATP concentrations are very far below, so I need to build up a molecule that'll let me start making more ATPs.
Which is ADP. The more ADP you have, the more potential you have to create ATP.
Yeah, but you need to take that ADP and go up the gluconeogenesis tract and remake your glucose so that you can start breaking it down and have more ATP and and then hydrolyze it for energy. But if we're running out of ATP, yeah, the reverse reaction would be more spontaneous, I guess.
Okay, so it's a little bioenergetics question.
So maybe the KEQ of going back and forth from ATP and ADP is pretty low, so that we can change directions quickly.
Okay, I like that. All right. Okay, next question. Question number 6. What does it mean to say that ATP hydrolysis is a spontaneous chemical reaction? That the reaction does not require an input of energy to proceed, that the products of the reaction have lower free energy than the reactants, that the products of the reaction have higher free energy than the reactants, or that the reaction requires an input of energy to proceed. So what does it mean to say that it's spontaneous? That means you got to have a negative delta G.
Yep.
So negative delta G would mean that your products have higher free energy than the your products have a lower free energy than the reactants. So, yes, and one of the possible answers is that the products of the reaction have lower free energy than the reactants, and that should be it as far as just spontaneous goes. Some other things in here are true, like it does require an input of energy to proceed.
Yep.
But that's not what spontaneous means.
Yep, make sure we're answering exactly what they're asking us.
Awesome, and we got it right. Okay, next question. Glucose is oxidized to what molecule during cellular respiration? ATP, carbon dioxide, water, oxygen. So glucose specifically, as I've just learned, is oxidized to carbon dioxide.
Well done.
Water is oxygen getting reduced.
Yep.
And ATP, it doesn't even, it's not affected by the actual glucose. It's not the glucose carbons are not the ATP carbons.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. It doesn't have anything to do with it, but the carbon dioxide, yes.
Eventually it will, but not quite yet.
Right. Okay, so carbon dioxide, and we got it. All right. Oxygen is reduced to what molecule during cellular respiration? I'm seeing a pattern here that we've answered these in bioenergetics before.
So these are really simple concepts that are sometimes really hard for people in biochem to just realize that oxygen is the final electron acceptor, and so oxygen gets reduced to water, and that glucose, those carbons, are eventually what gets oxidized completely to CO2.
Right.
So they're the extremely most basic, bare skeletal bone, overview of what is happening in metabolism. You've seen that cellular respiration equation on the board your whole life, and this is what drives it.
Yeah, and I think that's an important insight into the MCAT in general, that they want you to know glucose becomes carbon dioxide, oxygen becomes water. They want you to know that glucose is oxidized, oxygen is reduced, and just basically understand how the electrons flow through there. Like, that's what they want you to know. And you could answer all of these things just by knowing that. You can really pick them apart and think like a doctor and answer the questions. That's the little secret to this whole test, people. Okay, so water was the correct answer. Very cool. Question number 9. Cellular respiration involves the flow of electrons from one chemical species to another. Which of the following best describes this process? Electrons from oxygen are ultimately transferred to glucose. Electrons from oxygen are ultimately transferred to water. Electrons from glucose are ultimately transferred to oxygen, or electrons from glucose are ultimately transferred to carbon dioxide. So the electrons in glucose do not go to carbon dioxide. The electrons from oxygen, those aren't moved anywhere. Oxygen gets reduced. So I think that it's the electrons from glucose are ultimately transferred to oxygen to reduce it to water.
Yeah, and just thinking about, I know I start with glucose, I know I'm ending with oxygen. Okay, so that puts things in an order, a sequential order, so I can rule out answer choices based on anything that's out of order. And just knowing that my glucose, when I start glycolysis, I'm producing more FADH2 and NADH, which are those electron-carrying, substances that help me. And in the Krebs cycle, I make much more of those. And then eventually I use those. Those carry the electrons to the ETC that help me reduce O2 to water in the end.
Okay. And we were right. Okay. Bioenergetics is Very important. I would highly recommend everybody, okay, this is a stupid thing to say, but if you study one thing for the MCAT,
Yeah.
bioenergetics isn't a bad option. Okay, last question. We've gotten everyone right so far. I feel really good about this. Okay, last question. Which of the following best describes the respective free energy changes for the one-step combustion of glucose in the presence of oxygen as compared to the multi-step oxidation of glucose during cellular respiration, assuming both reactions occur under ideal conditions? So,
We have actually seen this before, right? This is another repeated question, so economists think this is pretty important.
yes, I would imagine this would be a huge thing for the MCAT, a huge topic to understand for the MCAT. The big thing here is you're going from a glucose to its completely oxidized form. So that means that the amount of energy given off is the same in both cases. However, the path to get there could have been different. But when they talk about the difference in free energy, it's the same. You're starting with glucose, you're ending with a bunch of carbon dioxides. So the correct answer should be that both reactions have the same change in free energy, and we got it right. And we also got a confetti party!
Woo!
Strong work, gang.